This is a video about my trip to Chester. And in Chester, my goal was to explore the culture of theater in Britain. The reason that I became interested in the first place is that theater originated from my passion and interest for film, as the one you're watching right now. It's one of the biggest entertainment mediums in the world, and also the best in my opinion. All the fascinating effects you could use to make it seem real. To be able to cut and use special effects, see all those beautiful locations, and above all, learn about all these interesting characters. But theater is something else. It's the nitty and gritty of cinema. Here you can only rely on the ability of the actors to transcend you into another world. You can't have all these fancy locations. Instead, you're only given the stage, which is limited in so many ways. The use of special effects, gone. And that's the reason to why I wanted to study theater. Since it's so hard and down to earth, I wanted to know if theater can convey you into another world the way that cinema can. Beforehand, I prepared myself by researching about the history of theatre in Great Britain. It wasn't the Brits who first invented theatre, it was the Greek who then brought it to the Romans, which in turn brought it to the Brits. A great example of that is the giant amphitheatre in Chester, which was first built in the 1st century and might have been the first actual stage theatre in Britain. Back then, the theatres often was about old folk tales and involved dancing. A millennium later, theatre had become religious. It was a way for people to learn about Christ, since almost none could read, and much less understand Latin. But later, Henry VIII suppressed all religious dramas in favor for jesters and musicians to impress the foreign kings. In the past, theater was an active experience. You could talk, comment, and even touch the actors. Theaters were often associated with chaos and something for the lower class, while today it is prestigious and sophisticated, and it's usually associated with posh people. Today, theater is a much more passive experience compared to back then, where the audience often sit completely silent and take in the drama. Beforehand, I thought that the reason that theater hasn't changed in a major way the last couple of decades might be because theater hasn't done anything to try to compete with cinema really. But the reason for that could be because the lack of ability of technical invention like in cinema. Many conducted that they preferred cinema over theater, and the reason being because of the diversity you could have in cinema. You can have it more action-oriented or adventure-oriented, for example, which is very hard to pull off in a theater play. With cinema, you're introduced to a much bigger art form. For example, cinematography and sound directing and other categories. There's more ways to immerse you in a movie. One of the chairmans at one of the local theaters in Chester had an interesting point against my point. Theater do you think that it has changed over the years in some ways?
Yes, it has to a point. Yes, it has to a point. In as much as that some of the traditions going back in even into Roman times have come back into fashion in the theatre now. For instance, theatre in the round comes originally from the arena theatres. Yes, you have a proscenium arch theatre with a stage, but you have lots of variations called thrusts in the round. And we've noticed with newer theatres, and we have that here at Storyhouse, they are now designed so that the seating can be moved into any shape. So quite often when a director is, well, a professional director in particular, is looking at a play, they can decide how they're going to set it, whether it's going to be, straight across, in the round, and whatever. Plus there's lots of other ways of theatre. There's theatre in the park. There are touring theatre, walking theatre, where you walk around an area and actors are in set places and they act. There's a park up the road here in Cheshire that specialises in that in the summer they run plays and the audience walk around and the actors just stay in little alcoves and act out scenes. So it still has some of the old Greek and Roman shapes, but the way that you use it is used much more fluidly than it was in the past. It's not particularly stuck on what they call proscenium march, which is a stage with a...
Then the trip began, and with me I had my research questions to proceed from. And those were: do you watch theatre? Do you prefer theatre or cinema? Do you learn about theatre in school? And do you think that stage theatre is dying? So I started out by going out in the public, asking pedestrians for an interview about theatre. And the answers was fairly interesting. I made a 1-minute podcast station at Riverbank, and I sat there for about 20 minutes before someone was willing to show up. A lot of people turned me down. For example, this guy. Hello, excuse me, would you like to do an interview about theatre? I'm doing a school project. I'm from Sweden, and I came here to do a little project about theatre. If like people watch it and stuff.
No, I know that, but no, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. But then an old man showed up. Alright, so now it's recording. Like that. So the first question is, do you watch theatre?
Not now. I used to do years back. Theatre. Yeah. I was in amateur dramatics at one time, but I was a stagehand, you see.
I proceeded to ask the same questions to different people to see if their answers was any different depending on their age and their gender. The second ones that I asked was of the same age as this old man, but of different gender. Let's call them the sweet ladies of the higher age group. Then I asked the younger generation whether they watch theatre. The first was a college student of the male gender, and the second one was a female foreign exchange student from China. And lastly, I got an interview with a man in his middle ages. And the first question was, do you watch theatre? Do you watch theatre how many times?
It's not very often, but I do prefer the theatre to the cinema.
You do?
Yeah.
And how many times do you watch theatre in a month, to say?
Oh, it's much less than a month. The last time I went to the theatre was last year in Scarborough, and I went to see Little Miss Sunshine. But yes, I much prefer. When was the last time you went?
Very recently, actually, just a couple of weeks ago, I went to London because my daughter lives there, and we went to West End. I can't even remember the name of the show we saw, but it was absolutely fantastic. You know, it's top-notch shows, really good theatre, and there's nothing quite like the real thing.
Yeah.
It's much nicer, yes.
My first question is, do you watch theatre in your daily life? Is it something that you do regularly?
School trips? No, not a lot.
Thank you very much. So, have you ever watched theatre here?
No, I just go to a cinema.
Oh, so you go to cinema. What do you like the most, the theater or cinema?
I don't know, because I never been to theater before, so
That's okay. My first question is, do you watch theater regularly?
Not regular, maybe once or twice a year at the maximum, I would have thought.
Do you watch it for some special occasion, or do you just watch it whenever you feel like it?
We tend to, if they do it, I belong to a couple of clubs, and sometimes we have clubs where we go to a theatre in the evening in London, sometimes do a special occasion, and if the children buy us Christmas presents, sort of theatres like Virgin tickets, we go. We quite often go to the West End. We go to the West End once a year. My wife goes with my daughter occasionally, and then we also got we always do the Panto every year as well.
Then I asked a follow-up question to the old man to why he stopped watching theater. Unfortunately, the interview was cut short. What made you stop watching theater?
Well, I was in the theatre, but we used to go around watching other people's performances.
Oh, is this your dog? Oh. Oh, he's very energetic. Oh, crap. Oh, no, it's okay. All right, bye-bye.
Come here. I was just being interviewed.
Yeah,
Come here, Alfie.
Interviewed by the theatre.
yeah. It seems like the middle to older generation watch more theater than the younger generation. The middle-aged man talks about this tradition of going out for a drink at a bar or a club that the younger generation seems to be unfamiliar with. So I asked this man, why could this
I
be?
think it will get less popular with the youngsters. The youngsters are more into the IT. They want everything. They want everything to them rather than the event of going out for the evening to the theatre to watch a show is. I think they'd rather stay indoors and be on their computers in their bedrooms, and they don't feel the interaction of other people of the event of going to the theatre, like going for a meal first or going for a drink. Talking to people in the theatre, to the youngsters, isn't as important as the social engagement.
I asked the older generation to how they got in contact with theatre to begin with. Maybe it was a long time ago, but how did you first get in contact with going to the theatre?
Well, with me, I used to go down to London a lot, and I used to like to see a show when I was in London, so I would just see what was on at the time, and I would have to just book it. I used to just go in and book something, And I've seen quite a few down in London. That's the main place that I've seen things. Yeah.
Well, I was born in Plymouth, and the first theatre visit I had, I think it was about 7, and it was a pantomime in one of these beautiful old theatres that are probably still existing down there and very well looked after, I would think. But, I always remember it was Cinderella, I think we saw, and that sticks in my mind as a great thing for kids to go and see, I think, especially at Christmas, it's a whole experience
It is,
on its own, very different to cinema, Lovely.
Well, it is. It's a much better experience.
Then I decided to get a viewpoint from a director's point of view.
I come from a small mining village in the South Wales Valleys, and at Christmas every year a pantomime was put on. Pantomime is something which may be particular to our country here. It's a very funny show, a comedy. There are very well-known themes, Cinderella or Jack in the Beanstalk, things of that sort, but always the pantomime is adjusted to have local jokes, a reference to people from the next village or somewhere close by. and that is part of it. And we always have the old the funny man, and we all sing out, "He's behind you," when the villain comes on, and all that sort of thing. And my father and mother always took part in those, so I had that tradition as well, and many youngsters will be the same. That pantomime was put on in a small village. It would run for 2 or 3 weeks, and a cinema would be used with a large capacity, and it would be full every night. Those days, of course, I'm talking about 1950, 56 perhaps, there was not so much television, and people made their own entertainment, and going out for a night to the pantomime was a big part of Christmas. That too is part of the tradition of theatre that we have. Yeah.
In the past, it was easier for people to access the theatre because of the cheaper prices back then, and also because there wasn't really any other visual mediums for entertainment back then. Today it's higher prices, and the reputation with theatre doesn't really fit in with the younger generation's typical image. Would you like to go and watch theatres sometime?
I don't know, because I don't know what.
No, it's alright, it's alright. Yeah. So do you learn about like Shakespeare and stuff like that?
So our equivalent of like secondary school education, yeah, we do learn about Shakespeare. I did Romeo and Juliet, but I didn't take much interest into it.
So, you being a teenager, do you feel like that theater is a thing? Does teenagers watch it, or is it more like cinema or movies?
I still think cinemas and movies are definitely more prominent, but I've heard and I've read that theatre is doing more to engage with young people.
In Sweden, and I have talked to other younger students here, and they said that they don't really have that much theater and stuff in school. But how did you what was it in school that you did with theater? Was it just, did you learn?
Part of the tradition, I think, in schools over here,
Yes.
that will be done. Yes, and often it's not part of the contract of a teacher to do it. Very often teachers will do it as we do because they love to do it. So in my school it was the English teacher, fairly naturally, who took on that role and who put on plays. And some of the other teachers had a role. I did one play when I was full staff, and the next year the English teacher wanted me to take a role in the play he was doing then. But I was a maths student, and my maths teacher felt that I wasn't working hard enough, so he would not let it happen. And so I didn't go into the play that year. So these are things.
It seems like the older generation was brought up with theatre. So I asked also the sweet ladies to why theatre seems to be more appealing to the older generation. And their answers was quite interesting. Do you think that theatre is something for the older generation, or do you think that theatre also?
I think it should be. I think it's more for the older generation, but I think it should be for all ages. You know, if the younger ones came in, they would really enjoy it. Yeah. I think it's for all ages, definitely. Yeah.
So, do you, now that theatre is competing with cinema, do you think that it has gotten less popular over the years?
I think it has, yes, but it needs to step up again, and it needs to, yeah, definitely.
So, how are they going to?
I think probably
get
because
beer?
when you go into the cinema, the prices are quite cheap. You know, they compete with each other, and you can see a show for like £5. Whereas obviously the theatres are a lot more expensive, but then you've got to think, well, you know, you've got to pay the actors and everything, and they put a lot into the production, you know, so Yes. I think that's probably what it is, the cost, but you've got to have the cost anyway for what goes on.
What do you have
Two very different things, I think. I mean, big cities that we've got some marvellous, really old, very decorative theatres in the big cities. Probably got them in Newcastle as well as London, I'm not sure, but. And that's an experience in itself, just to sit under all the beautiful ornamentation, you know, and I just enjoy that. Just an experience to be there. Never mind the actors, and it's top class actors and stuff.
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
and I've got to do musicals. And,
So, do you think that theater is a thing for older people, or is it for all ages?
It should be for all ages. I guess the audience we have here probably tends towards the older group, but we've a lot of younger actors coming along, and if you have play with lots of young actors in, they tend to get their friends to come and watch, and that can bring the age of the audience down a little. So I think there's hope for the future. If we had no youngsters, if there were no young patrons coming to watch plays, we would be in trouble. But I think theatre will stay alive. There is something about it that speaks to the human condition.
So you don't think that theatre is going to die now when it has movies and cinemas?
The human interaction is still strong in a lot of people, and you know, despite electronics and all the electrical gadgets that you can have today, I think face-to-face meeting people and seeing people act still gives over a stronger message than it ever has. And there are lots and lots of new playwrights around. There's a lot of, younger people who are writing. We have people now.
So you are trying to engage more younger audience, more. Yeah.
I hate to say it, we need it for income as well as everything else, because as people are getting older, with respect to their age, sometimes they don't want to come out on nights like this. They just are getting too old to come out of a night. So we need to bring in newer audiences, which tend to be younger, to accommodate and counter those that we are losing because of age. And the people who are aging, who can't come, are always very sad that they can't, aren't they, John? We almost get an apology from them. They say, well, we can't make it anymore, and we shall miss it. It's so nice that they feel very much a part of this place.
Do you think it's a part of the British culture, theatre?
I think the government have certainly tried to push kind of traditional British values in more recent years. Whether or not it's actually transferred to people being proud about Shakespeare or being proud about our heritage, that's a different matter. You'd have to, ask a large group of people from different age groups and racial backgrounds and religions and see if they feel the same way. But certainly, even if you don't study Shakespeare, you know who he is. He's part of British history. He's had a massive impact on our language as well. But yeah, I don't know how many people would agree.
So do you think that theatre is a part of the British culture, or
I think it's worldwide, really. Yeah, I think all over the world it's a big thing. I would say definitely, not just here.
Because in Sweden it's not. I'm from Sweden, and there it's not that popular at all. I think it's a lot bigger here in Chester, when there's 10 different
and
small
I know, in the likes
theatres.
of Manchester yesterday, when I was coming through Manchester, and there was a big billboard of I think it was what was it? I can't. The big mask. What's it called? Can't remember. But that was on, and I thought, I would love to go in. If I could have time, I would love to just go in and watch it. Yeah, but the likes of London and Manchester and places like that, they have the big theatres on. And in Newcastle, it's not so much really. It's more Sunderland. They tend to go up to Sunderland. But yes, it is. It's definitely something that we should be doing more of. definitely.
What's the reason for not for young people that they don't go to watch theater, for example? Why do you think so?
I think definitely advertisement. So if you go on social media or look on a billboard or a bus station, you're going to see trailers for films, you're going to see posters for films and TV shows rather than a theatre production. You have to probably look elsewhere and like more specifically if you want to find what's on the Storyhouse for theatre-wise, or actually come and look and read the kind of brochure of what's going on in the Storyhouse over the next couple of months. So it's less accessible.
One point that contradicted between the younger generation and the older generation was the influence they had felt of theatre. The older generation talks about the billboard, for example, that's more physical advertisement. But the younger generation doesn't seem to notice this because they are on social media and internet where theatre hasn't really put their mark on yet. And stuff. Do you feel that theatre in a way has like get them pushed back now when the movies and cinema has come and taken?
There is an obvious change. There is a difference, and yet, if you look at the productions that we do, or we did in the group I was at before, particularly the productions that will take place in the winter months, we have people who are prepared to come out of their nice warm homes on a wet and windy November night and pay money to sit on seats that are certainly not as comfortable as the sofa at home to watch real live actors do their thing instead of watching the highly paid and very skillful people on the television. As long as that happens, as long as those people will come, we will go on doing the drama that we do.
Yeah. So very interesting. How are they going to?
I think
Get
probably
beer.
because when you go into the cinema, the prices are quite cheap. You know, they compete with each other, and you can see a show for like £5. Whereas obviously the theatres are a lot more expensive, but then you've got to think, well, you know, you've got to pay the actors and everything, and they put a lot into the production, you know. So yes, I think that's probably what it is, the cost, but you've got to have the cost anyway for what goes on.
What do you have
Two very different things, I think. I mean, in big cities, that we've got some marvellous, really old, very decorative theatres in the big cities. Probably got them in Newcastle as well as London, I'm not sure, but and that's an experience in itself, just to sit under all the beautiful ornamentation, you know, and I just enjoy that. Just an experience to be there. Never mind the actors, and it's top class actors and stuff.
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
and we've got to do musicals. And,
To investigate further, I asked the middle-aged man if the reason to why theatre is not dying is because it is a part of the British culture. The reason it's always going to have a place is because of the British culture, or is it embedded in the culture in some sort of way?
I think it's a medium to entertain people. I don't think culture comes into it because there's theatres worldwide.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a cultural thing myself. It's just an entertainment thing. But the younger people like different types of entertainment.
Yeah.
Entertainment is so broad now. I mean, and everything gets brushed as entertainment now. Like sport,
Yeah.
sport is becoming more entertainment rather than. So you can class that, and it's getting more and more, and so everything gets more and more squeezed.
Yeah, that's true. This brings us to the next question, the most important question of this project. Is theatre dying? Yeah, that's why I wanted to see if it's... now it's coming to the next question, so if do you think theatre is dying in a sort of way? Sounded dramatic.
I don't think it's dying. I certainly there's not an awful lot of people that I know who go and watch theatre, but I don't think I'm necessarily the right demographics, like the right type of person to ask. Surely, well, like there's a lot more of kind of, if you ask someone that studied English, they probably have watched loads of theatre productions or used the Storyhouse for its kind of speakers and whatnot, but me, I just use it for coming and studying or getting a coffee or reading rather than actually going and watching theatre.
Do you like River and sitting there and asking people, mostly old people, because they work there, and yeah, they watch a lot of theater compared to the younger folks, and they say that that the older age group are watching more than the youngers.
Well, it might not necessarily be dying. I just think maybe as you get older, you appreciate it more potentially. But I've only watched a couple outside of school. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like something I regularly watch.
So what did you think about it? Was it good, or do you prefer cinema?
Enjoyed it, but yeah, if somebody asked me, would you like to go and watch a play or a film, I'd probably opt for the cinema.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. This made me think that theatre isn't perhaps dying, since it's just as alive as before in some circles and communities, but the interest in the general public has declined, and therefore it's not something normal you do unless you're specifically passionate about stage theatre. A controversial one, but does today's society promote or oppress theatre?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
I think it suppresses.
No. I'm not sure how much it promotes it either, really. Theatre is simply a part of life, and it goes on. It shows us, it reflects life to us. It's a mirror in some ways to what goes on. If you read pretty well any newspaper, you will find somewhere in it there is a editorial about a play that's been on somewhere. The critical comment that way. We use the newspapers to advertise our productions as well. We're a part of the fabric, really, and I don't see us going away anytime soon.
I don't think it will go away because it is, in a way, playing. If you think about children playing and using their imagination to play a game of pirates and whatever, that's what we are doing, except we've got printed words to learn and stories to learn. And it is just playmaking, and therefore that's within the human gene. So I can't see it being, well, I hope it would never be suppressed. And I think, parents encourage their children to play, so it's a natural movement.
That's an interesting thought. It's like playing.
Yes, it is.
And playing will never be out of fashion.
Exactly.
No.
And it's just that when we do a production, you're just learning some. Whereas when you're playing, you're going to kill me now, or you're going to shoot me now, or you're going to dress me up now. That type of thing. That is literally all we're doing on printed lines.
So we hope you enjoy our show tonight.
Oh, yes.
And you're welcome to sit here now. We will be opening the door in a moment, and our other customers will come in, and we'll...
Thank you.
The eagle has arrived in the nest.
Thank you. Is this chair still abandoned?
Oh! What's that for?
It's a counter passage. Mr. Lawson here thinks that it is too slow, and we are trying to persuade him otherwise. It's not too slow.
The reason why I chose to do interviews is because with it you can get a more personal connection to the interviewee rather than doing a survey. Also, I believe you can get a more nuanced answer as they are able to speak freely and there are no comprehensions. Everything is raw. Though the downside is that you can't reach out to as many people that you could do with a third survey, which then means you can get more opinions and angles on the same subject. This makes the answers more credible. Then, after having watched 2 theatre plays With fairly high expectations, after all those interviews, I have to say that the theatre experience exceeded my expectation. The acting were superb, and the costumes too. I was mesmerized through the whole runtime, and I realized afterwards that special feeling of never experiencing this ever again, and how lucky I was to have been one of the few people that actually got to see the story unfold before my eyes. I will end this film with a quote. Does the emerald lose its beauty for lack of admiration? Does gold or ivory or purple, a lyre or a dagger, a rosebud or a sapling? Marcus Aurelius.